Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, here at SCAT Studios. I'm here with author Jerry Shine, and we're going to review his book, A Year Underwater. So, Jerry, take it away.
Thanks. Can I just take a step off to the side a little bit and talk about how you and I met?
Oh, be my guest.
Well, that goes back quite a few years.
Right.
Back sure everybody knows.
20th century.
Yeah, right. Mr. Parker's is quite the legend. But I had signed up at a Taekwondo school, and I went in for one of my first classes. Henry was the teacher, and I remember there was a guy there. He had decided he didn't need to wash his uniform anymore. It was summertime, so he
knocked you up before you got in the gym.
Well, at some point during the class, he made a point of telling you that he knew he didn't need to wash his uniform anymore. All he had to do was hang it up and let it air dry. And you let him know that that was not the case.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, man.
And as I recall, you said to him, your uniform is coming through the door before you are, and it's staying in the room after you've left. And I said, I like this guy. So that was many moons ago.
Right. You aren't kidding.
And here we are today.
Right. So, as far back as I remember, you've always had something to do with scuba diving.
Yeah.
Let's take it from day one.
Right. Well, almost. I bought my first first dive mask when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
I was living on a lake in Connecticut, and they had a boathouse there. And I walked in, and I put 50 cents down, and they gave me this little white plastic mask, and that was the start of it. And I've always been interested in the water. I don't remember a time when I looked at the water and didn't wonder what was happening underneath it.
Okay. Now, if I recall, you went to Mass Maritime, correct?
I did. I went to Mass Maritime. Well, I got certified to dive when I was 14. So I think 13. I was in the 8th grade, but I lived in Woburn. I had nowhere to scuba dive there. My mom couldn't afford to buy me gear. And then I went to school at Mass Maritime, and all of a sudden I'm right on the water. I'm in Bourne. I could walk out my door and into Buzzards Bay, and that was when I really started diving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you also got into photography some years later, right?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Well, it's funny because photography was something I did for fun, but then when I started publishing books, it became something that was necessary. Because when people wanted you to talk about your book, they wanted to see photos. So I had to have something to show them.
Good.
And so little by little, I got better and better at it. I always thought of you as the photographer and me as the writer. But I guess at this point now, yes, I am a writer, photographer.
Right.
I think more people actually think of me at this point as a photographer than a writer. Yeah. And I'm trying to reclaim the...
Because you're the only one I've known that got into underwater photography.
Well... and I went the other way because I started at underwater photography and then worked my way up and started doing surface photography.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I think most people go the other way.
Backwards.
Yeah, I did it backwards. So it was easier because once you've done it underwater, shooting on land, and this was back in the days of film, when you go underwater and you have 36 shots and you can't see what you're shooting, so you're bracketing left and right, and it was very difficult, and then you come up on land and you can, if you run out of film, you just change film. You see something that's different, you just change lenses. You can't do any of that underwater.
Now, how did you get into writing as such? Because I always know you had written magazines and stuff like that. And when you came up with, is this your first book as such?
No, this was number 3.
Okay.
The first 2 books were really for divers. They're specifically for divers. And this book is for divers and non-divers alike. But as far as writing goes, I guess I've always wanted to be a writer. I know that when I was, I guess about 6 or 7, I saw the movie The Phantom of the Opera, the old black and white one. And I sat down and I started writing it. I was going to write it as a book. I didn't realize you couldn't write things that had already been written. And so just from there, all through school, I was writing. After I graduated Mass Maritime, and I was working at sea, shipping out. I was on board and I was writing. And so, I guess almost as long as diving, there's been writing.
So this is what you would say culmination of both? Because when you wrote your other two books, you weren't as such into photography then, right?
The first one I was not. The first one I was a writer, and I really had to kick it into gear with the photography in order to help sell the book. And then by the time the second book came out, that was I would say 50-50. It was as much writing as photography. The first book was really a guidebook to places in New England that people can scuba dive. And the second book was more of a guidebook to a specific type of animal that people find underwater.
Now, I noticed in your book, I found it interesting that you didn't use chapters, you went by seasons.
Yeah.
Break that down for me.
Well, there were no real natural breaks where I could say this is chapter 1, this is chapter 2, unless every time I made a dive, I made a different chapter. And that seemed it was a little too much. But as you said, the title of the book is A Year Underwater. And so it starts on New Year's Day and then goes 365 to New Year's Eve. And breaking it up by seasons just seemed like
natural progression.
Natural progression.
Now, on the cover, you have pictures of two other gentlemen.
Yes.
We'll deal with that later. Tell us a little bit about these your compadres as such.
Well, those are two of my great friends. Two of the best people I know, and I'm very fortunate as a diver that I met them because I'm a diver and because we're all divers. The guy on the left is Diver Ed, and he runs the Dive-In Theater up in Bar Harbor. He has a huge boat, and he takes people out into Bar Harbor throughout the summer, and his boat is set up like an outdoor theater, and people then sort of sit down in front of a huge screen, and he goes underwater, and he has a live video and audio feed, and that goes back up to the boat while he narrates what he's seeing.
From reading the book, I got the impression with divers it's sort of like a fraternity.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you look at almost any kind of sport, not a team sport, but an individual sport that people do together, diving, rock climbing, martial arts, that people bond, the people who are doing it together. And diving is definitely like that. It's one of the things that I like about it, that it makes it easy to maintain friendships with people, even when you don't see them that much.
And another thing that got me is the great distances you would go to dive.
Yeah. When you want to be underwater and you want to see something special or something different, you have to go where it's going to be, or where your best chances of it are going to be. So right off the bat, the first dive, I leave from my house in Somerville, right here in Somerville, and drive north to Eastport, Maine, which is about, it's as far up the Maine coast as you can go before you hit Canada. So it's about a 6-hour drive. And then, and then going down to New Jersey and down to Chincoteague, Virginia, and all the way down to Florida.
It made me laugh, because when you would go during the wintertime, policemen and other people were like, this dude must be out of his mind.
You get that a lot. You really do. And especially because I do a lot of my diving right from the shore. And that was sort of one of the things that I wanted to point out in this book, was how much marine life there is just a stone's throw from the beach. That you don't have to get on a boat and go a mile offshore. But because of that, that means I'm putting on my gear and taking off my gear right there on the road, and people are constantly walking by. And when it's 20 degrees outside and everything is iced over, they're looking at you like, something's wrong here.
Well, you want to take us on a little excursion here with some of your...
Look at some photos?
Yeah,
sure,
definitely.
Let's do that. I'm all set up.
Okay. First one.
Okay, this is a photograph of an animal. It's quite beautiful. It's known as a nudibranch. And nudibranch is Latin for naked gill. And these animals are among the most incredible animals on Earth. They are snails that have evolved to no longer have a shell. And a snail without a shell should be dinner for everything down there. And these animals indeed have no natural defenses now that they've lost their shell. But if you look at this photo, you see these flower-like things that are around. Those are animals. They look like plants, but those are animals. Yep. And they defend themselves with these stinging cells that are very similar to a jellyfish, and they're very effective. Most creatures will stay away from these things. They're known as hydroids. The nudibranch is able to eat the hydroid, and it actually eats that stinging cell, and it moves it through its digestive tracts all the way to those iridescent white tips at the end of the projections on its back. And there it reorients them so that they're facing out, and it then uses them for its own protection. So if something then tries to eat it, it will fire those stinging cells at it.
Now you find these how far down?
Oh, you can find them anywhere. You can walk in the water and find them. There are some species that you can find them walking on the beach at low tide.
Oh, wow.
And you see how colorful it is.
Because you would think that where they lose their shell, it's like it's open season.
Right, exactly. But they're quite a miracle of evolution, and they're spectacular animals. There are several thousand species, or at least a couple of thousand species of them worldwide, and the vast majority of them are like a half inch, maybe a quarter inch. They're very small. But the ones that we have here in New England are very big. This particular individual was was over 3 inches long. It was about 4 inches long. Yeah, and you can see just the colors, how beautiful. When people see animals like this, they're kind of amazed that they come from around here. They think
you wouldn't think. All you think is whatever they got in the ocean around here.
Right.
It's beer cans, cars, and plastic.
Yes, right. But it is not. It's stunningly beautiful right off of our coast. It's not a coincidence that here off New England we have the richest fishing grounds in the world. You know, they're not down in the Caribbean or in Indonesia. They're here.
Who knew?
Yeah. This is a fish called a sculpin. And I love fish like this because they rely a little bit on camouflage.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yeah, and so you might need to look for a second to pick them out. But because they rely on camouflage, they let you get very close. You can get to within inches of them. You can even touch them sometimes. And this is one of the things about diving and being underwater, is that there's nowhere that you can get closer to wildlife than you can when you are underwater. You know, you're not looking at...
You're in their world.
You're in their world, and you're literally within inches of them. When you think of people looking at birds or through these high-powered telescopes, or going on safari and they're in a jeep looking at something across the desert, you know, no. Here you're right there, and you are within arm's length.
Wow. Now, how big do they grow?
This particular guy was probably, I'd say about 15, 16 inches long, and you can see he's got a big, heavy head. You know, so these are thick-bodied fish. Now this is kind of an eel-like guy. You can see he's got these blubbery lips.
I was going to say, it almost looks transparent.
Yeah. It's got a little bit of that look to them. It's just their coloration gives them that appearance. This is known as an ocean pout. I used to see a lot of these guys. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. There's no fishery for them, but maybe what they feed on has been overfished, or I'm not really sure. But I don't really see too many of these guys. But when I photographed this guy, I saw him and I got this one shot of him, and then he saw me and he zipped under a rock. A big boulder. He didn't want to have anything to do with me, and so I went behind the boulder and waited for him to come out. And while I was waiting, a crab walked in front of the boulder, and he just zipped out, ate that crab, looked up, saw me, and went back under the boulder, and the whole thing took maybe 2 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you get to see quite a bit when you're under there. And, you know, we think of fish and the shapes of fish, but there are so many different types of body plans and different shapes down there that all defy description. This is a fish that's known as a lumpfish, and you can see that's a pretty bizarre shape.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's as high as it is long. And it's known as a lumpfish because it's got all those lumps and bumps all over its body. You can see the way it's colored. And you can see those yellow things and orange stuff in behind them. Those look like plants, but those are all animals too.
You're kidding me. Wow.
And it's also one of the things about this fish. All fish sort of have fins on the bottom of their bodies, small ones that they use. On the lumpfish, those fins have evolved into a sucker disc. And so it can actually suck onto something and then hold itself there. So sometimes you'll find them in areas where there's strong current, and they're just sucked on while everything else is blowing by.
Oh, yeah. Goodbye.
Right,
See you later.
Yeah. One time I was in an area where there must have just been a hatchling, all the eggs had just hatched, and there were a whole bunch of very small lumpfish. They were all maybe 1/8 of an inch. And as soon as they saw me, they all glommed onto me and they sucked onto me. And I was about to get out of the water, and I had to make sure that they were all off of me, or I couldn't leave the water with them suckered on, or they were going to die.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Now this weird-looking guy is a torpedo ray. I have a friend who described it as looking like an elephant that was run over by a steamroller.
Yeah, because all you just see is the eyes.
Yeah. There's what he looks like, his whole body. But there he is again. And these are fish that have electric organs in them. And they can deliver about 200 volts.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you don't want to touch them. They can zap you hard enough to knock you unconscious, which is not a good thing underwater.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Now, how big circumference are these?
Well, if you look at that guy, he's about 3 feet, probably about 3.5 feet from side to side. And if you know much about rays, or you've seen stingrays and such on the Discovery Channel or on TV, they sort of flap the sides of their bodies like wings. This one is different in that it swings. It has a very heavy tail, and it swings it from side to side while it swims. And then it sets down on the bottom. You can see this guy has a little bit of sand on him. It sets down on the bottom and then lifts itself up and then sets down again hard and then covers itself with sand.
Oh wow!
So that's how it gets prey. It's hidden under the sand, and it also makes it a little bit dangerous because you don't want to
step on it.
Yeah, you don't want to step on it. Put your hand down on it because they will not move. They rely on their
that's
they have a lot
amazing.
of confidence in their electricity. This handsome guy is a wolffish. These are big eels. Eel-like fish. They're not really eels, but they have bodies like eels. This particular guy, his head is about the size of a cantaloupe. You can see he's kind of scary looking.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I actually think that these guys are scary looking because their face is almost human. And that doesn't say much for us. But most fish, their eyes are on the sides of their bodies. His are kind of to the front.
Because this is the kind of species, all these that you're showing look like you see in, was it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Yeah, right, exactly. And he's got those teeth. And here's a mating pair. So when it's time for them to mate, the two of them will go into a lair together.
Oh wow!
And they will stay there until the female lays the eggs, and she'll line the walls of the cave with them, and then she'll leave, and the male will stay with them, and he'll make sure that nothing eats them, and that they hatch into.
That's amazing.
Yeah. They're a handsome couple. But
gender reversal.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's very common with bottom fish. That it is the male that will generally stay with the fish while stay with the babies while the female swims off.
Interesting.
And this is one of the things about being underwater, is that you don't and also being underwater in a place that you dive a lot, is you don't just see stuff, but you see behaviors, and you start to recognize
certain behavior.
Yeah. Like these two guys. These are very common fish around here. They're known as cunner. And these two have agreed to disagree. And they're each decided that there's a little area that they want just for themselves. Marine biologists have decided that these fish will rarely move within more than about 6 feet. They stay in very small areas.
For their entire life?
I'm not sure if they mean the entire life or just for a season, because then when winter comes, they will sort of go torpid and almost hibernate. But It seems to me like I've seen them move around more than 6 feet. But these two guys have clearly said, this is my area.
Yeah,
and so they swim up to each other with their mouths open as wide as can. They try to intimidate each other. It's probably not unlike some of our own behaviors.
Right.
This is a school of pollock. And I have to tell you, there's nothing as magical as being inside a big school of fish. It's an incredible experience. This school was not particularly big, but I've been inside schools where there's not just 100 or 200 or 1,000, it's 10,000.
Wow.
And you can't see them from one end to the other. And you can swim up into them, and they'll just sort of, they'll swim right by you within inches, and they'll just sort of glide around you.
Because that was my next question. What is their reaction? It's not like, wait a minute, we got something here that's not supposed to be here.
Yeah, right. There's something, what doesn't belong and why. It depends on the type of fish. So this particular fish that's in the photo, the pollock, they will not allow you to do that. They will swim away from you, but other fish will allow you to swim right up. And again, this strange body plans, and you see evolution in action. This fish is known as a sea robin. It's about the same size as a sculpin. It's probably about 15 inches from end to end. And if you look, it's got those 3 fingers.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, and
they like walk on the bottom.
It does. It definitely walks across the bottom. That's just it's the beginnings of its fins on the side, and they have evolved to separate out, and then he can walk like that. And also he has all kinds of chemical receptors and the ends of the tips of those fingers, and he will push them into the sand, and he's looking for prey underneath the sand. He's looking for clams and other things that have hidden there that you wouldn't be able to see, but you can detect it chemically. This isn't much of a photo. It's just a pair of butterfly fish, but these are clearly tropical fish. But this was photographed up here. I shot this in Rhode Island. And what happens is the Gulf Stream comes up from the Caribbean and off of Florida, and it's so strong and it's so forceful that it sweeps some of these fish up, and they can't get out of it. And now they come up the coast with the Gulf Stream, and then the Gulf Stream hits right around Cape Cod and then bangs a right and heads out into the Atlantic. But before it does so, it sort of spins off vortices, and anything that's in it will be spun off into coastal waters, and that's what happened to these fish. All of a sudden, you have these tropical fish, and they're swimming around up here. They're strangers in a strange land, and they can survive just fine through the summer.
Then after that,
yeah, once the winter comes, they're not programmed to move, and their bodies aren't programmed to withstand that kind of cold. So you will see a lot of people go down to Rhode Island, people who have saltwater aquariums, and they try to catch these fish and bring them home. And at first it looks like it's kind of cruel to take a fish out of the ocean, but it's the only way that they're going to live. This is one of the things I love about being underwater, is seeing these really tiny worlds. So this is a shrimp on the left, and this shrimp is maybe 3/4 of an inch long. And what it's holding is a juvenile crab. So that crab is smaller than a pencil eraser. And I never really thought of a shrimp as being intimidating. But when I took this photo, I sort of took it almost from the crab's point of view, and that shrimp looks pretty scary. I wouldn't want to be the crab. This is more behavior. This is another species of the nudibranch that I showed the first photo. That's on the left, and on the right, that looks like some kind of a flower, but that's an animal called an anemone. And the nudibranch on the left is attacking the anemone on the right, and the anemone is pulling away. You can almost feel the motion of it trying to move to the right, and it's releasing all of these white strings. And those have all kinds of stinging cells in them. They're almost like a string of Chinese firecrackers.
Oh, wow.
And if those get tangled up in the nudibranch's body, they'll all set off. And,
Oh, what?
Yeah, and that will be it.
You could hear eyeballs and teeth all over the ocean.
Yes, yeah. So this one, in this particular instance, I watched this for a while, and the nudibranch gave up. The anemone was walked away fine. Here's another nudibranch, another behavior, and it's laying an egg string. And it's laying it on a piece of seaweed, kind of a translucent piece of seaweed. And you can see there's another egg string from another nudibranch on the opposite side of it. We don't think a jellyfish is as beautiful, but they are beautiful.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, that was a big guy. That's known as the lion's mane jelly. You can see that its tentacles are several feet long. And it always amazes me that when you see them up near the surface and they're getting buffeted about by the waves, and that their tentacles don't get all tangled up, but there's just enough water flow through them to keep them apart. These are 3 anemones. Anemones are animals. They're sort of an extreme version of an animal that looks like a plant. And these 3 anemones, you can see they're on a rock that has some vertical cuts in it. And because of that, I'm able to identify that rock. And I've been diving in this spot for over 20 years. And I saw these guys, these 3 anemones, on my very first dive there. And I've been photographing them every year since, and they've never moved more than a few inches in all that time.
They're like, don't worry, we're still here.
That's right, we're still here, we're good. But they are fully capable of moving, but they just have enough food there that they don't ever have to. You see some big lobsters down there. You know how you get your pound and a quarter chicken lobster? No, this guy is probably about 20 pounds. You don't want to...
No, not at all.
You don't want to let him have your finger, because he will take it off.
His claws look like they're enormous.
Yeah, when you see them that big, the claws actually look like they're too heavy to lift. And finally, the thing that I love the most about diving, and particularly about diving around here locally, is diving at night. I just love going in the water after dark. This is you can see a few divers out in the water off to the left. This was up in Rockport, and you see all kinds of stuff that you don't see during the day at night. But the thing that I love the most at night is that you see squid.
Is there any particular season you like to dive in?
Oh yeah, all 4 of them.
Okay.
But the squid you'll only see during the summer, and you know every season has its pluses and minuses.
Okay.
And so the summer, I would say you got warm air, warm water, and you have animals like this.
Okay.
The squid, and they let you get very close, and you can see the different color patterns on its body. And the amazing thing is, it can change all of these color patterns in the blink of an eye.
Wow.
In
Find me if you can.
Yeah, a quarter of a second. And that makes it very difficult to see them during the day, because they go up in the water and then they really blend in. And then at night they go down to the sand and they hunt, and they're easier to see, but they can change and blend in so fast. And the thing is, they're colorblind, and no one knows
That's wild.
how they're able to do that. If they can't see what it is, they can't see the colors of what they're passing over, how do they change their colors to match?
It's like, haha, we switched up. What color? We don't know.
Yeah, that's right. And just one more. This is the last shot that I've got. And I find this one of the most amazing thing about squid is they communicate with each other through color patterns, which of course they can't see the color, but somehow they can communicate, but also through arm positions. They manipulate their arms in different ways.
Wild.
And I know that I have had squid try to communicate with me. And that's what this guy was doing. As I was photographing him, he kept changing the position of his arms and looking at me, and I think wondering how come I was not communicating back.
He's like, wait a minute. He doesn't belong down here.
That's right, yeah.
So when you say try and communicate, you think they have some sort of extrasensory perception that they?
No, but they're very, very intelligent. There's no doubt when you are looking at a squid and an octopus, they're close relative, the same thing. When you are looking at them, you get the feeling that they're looking back at you. They're not just wondering whether or not you're going to eat them or they can eat you.
It's like, who are you?
There's a thought process. Yeah, they're thinking there, and I'm not sure what it is that they communicate to each other, but they definitely do communicate. Marine biologists have identified like 20 different arm patterns that they use and different coloration patterns that they use, and so, like I say. And this was a young one, so I think he didn't realize that I didn't know squid. I didn't speak squid, so.
You know, what's up with that, man?
Yeah. So that's the last
okay.
The last of the photos.
So, let's get back to the book.
Okay.
With your friends, when you go out, do you guys go your separate way, or how does that work?
That's a touchy subject. You hit a touchy subject there. The buddy system has been in use in scuba diving for a very long time, but not everybody uses it, and I'm one of those people who really doesn't use it a lot of the times. So when I dive with someone who wants to stay together, then we stay together. And if I dive with someone who doesn't care, like my two friends here on the cover, we walk in the water together and immediately.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, we're same ocean, different dive. That doesn't mean that you can make any dive by yourself. There are some dives that are. These are mostly simple shore dives, 30, 40, 50 feet deep. If you get into trouble, you can come up to the surface, and I've been doing it since close to 40 years now.
Okay.
Without incident.
Now, what about diving at night?
Diving at night is a magical experience. It is one of the best experiences there are. When you think about how many people there are in the world, and the tiny fraction of them who get to go underwater, and then of those people, there's just a tiny fraction of them who bother to go underwater at night. So when you do that, you are seeing something and experiencing things that the vast majority of the entire world's population will never experience.
So it's sort of like going on a safari, right? Or, well, yeah.
It's, I've never been on a safari, so I can't really say, but I can tell you this, it's a special feeling. So even now, so when I go diving, if I'm just diving during the day, I'm in a good mood, I'm happy, I'm gonna go diving. But when I'm going for a night dive, there's something, it's special.
This is the joint.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now equipment, that's gonna be quite interesting because it's, you really don't feel it while you're underneath, right?
Yeah.
But once you get out, that's another story.
Yeah, when you are on land, you're hauling a fair amount of gear. And that can, you can control that to a degree. So you have a suit on, you've got a tank on, you may have two tanks on, and the tanks come in different sizes. So the bigger the tank, the heavier it's going to be. And then, believe it or not, even with that tank on, you need a weight belt. Which it doesn't make a lot of sense. You would think that you already have a steel tank on your back. Why do you need a weight belt?
Right.
Because you can wear anywhere from 20 to 30 to 35 pounds on that weight belt. But it's because the tank is hollow. So it's not so much weight, but buoyancy. And it's the same principle that keeps a steel ship on top of the water rather than underneath. You've got an empty tank, a hollow tank. So even though it weighs a lot, some tanks actually float. And so you need something to counteract that.
Now you have different suits for different weather.
Yes. If you're diving in warmish water, or what we would consider warmish water, if you talk to somebody in Florida and you say warm water, they would think we never have warm water up here because they're thinking 80 degrees. But I would say any water that's 50 degrees or up, you're pretty comfortable in a wetsuit. That's a rubber suit.
Okay.
That's what most of us think about when we think of a scuba diver. It lets in a little bit of water, so there's going to be a little water touching you, which is why it's called a wetsuit. But then when the water is cold, you wear what's called a dry suit. And this is a suit that allows no water to come in. And underneath it, you have heavy thermals that are very similar to a ski suit.
Now, what is the difference between diving around here and, say, someone goes on vacation in the Caribbean?
Yeah, that's a great question. They're both wonderful. And when you dive in someplace tropical, a lot of times what you're talking about is a reef. And so you're going to see these amazing coral structures that, unlike anything that you'll find on land, they're colorful, they're swarming with colorful fish. They're all different shapes and types and sizes, and it's a wonderful experience. When you dive around here, you don't get that, but you get something very, just as interesting to me. So if you go to a place like Gloucester and you're about to dive, so you're looking out over the water, and so here are these, you might have on one side this sort of sloping bedrock going into the water. And then on the other side, you'll have the sheer cliff, and it's dropping. And now if you go underwater, you're seeing exactly the same thing. You go on that side, and it's still that sloping bedrock. And if you go over here, it's still that sheer rock cliff. So you're seeing the same thing, but it's in a completely different environment. And to me, that's always fascinating.
Now, where do you prefer to dive? Here in this area or in the Caribbean?
I prefer it up here because I know, and I love diving in the Caribbean, but I do prefer it up here because I'm seeing things that I've seen a lot of times before, which should be boring.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, but it works the other way because when I watch something, I know what's happening. I understand what they're doing, and if I don't understand what they're doing, then I know I'm seeing something that I've never seen before, and I know that I'm seeing that. But if you just go to the Caribbean once a year, for a week, you're seeing a lot of stuff, and you might be able to identify it, but you don't really know what it is you're seeing because you don't see it enough. And to me, that's the difference.
Now, what advice would you give to a beginning diver?
I hear people a lot of times talking about what organization certified them. Where did they take their lessons? And I don't think that that's important at all. What's important is that you find a good teacher, a teacher that you're simpatico with, that's going to understand you and that you're going to understand them and you're comfortable with each other. It's important that you find people to dive with that you want to spend time with. Because you're going to be on the beach together, you're going to be on the boat together, you're going to have to trust each other underwater. If you're with people you don't like, that's kind of a...
you didn't need that hose.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like Sea Hunt.
Right.
It's also good to learn different places to dive, so that you're not diving the same places over and over. Like you say, how far I would drive. Yeah. I can go anywhere from here to Canada, and there's 50 different places that I can
Now, would you recommend people take lessons first?
Oh, you have to take lessons first.
And where would that take place?
Find a dive shop. Just go online.
Because actually there's a dive shop up here on Broadway, if I'm correct.
It's on...
Washington Street?
Washington Street, yeah. That's United Divers, and that's my dive shop, and they're fantastic.
Special shout out to United Divers.
Yeah, special shout out to United Divers. They're wonderful. They're great people. They're great instructors. They run a lot of specials, a lot of classes. I could not recommend them highly enough.
Now,
they're not paying me.
Right. Now, have you taught any folks to dive?
No, I refuse to do that. I don't have the patience for it. I want to, when I
like Taekwondo, right?
Right, yeah. When I get there, I want to just do it. And you need a mindset, and that's what I say. You have to find the right instructor. So if you wanted to learn and you found me, I can tell you right away you found the wrong instructor. You need to find somebody who's patient, and really knows their subject and is experienced. And
now your son dives also, right?
He does. He's he grew up with it around him. So when he was
it was only natural.
Yeah. When he was like a toddler, I was taping 2-liter bottles, to his back, and he would run around the house pretending he was diving. And he would make tub dives. I would set up a tank outside the bathtub, and he would get in there.
Guess what?
Yeah, oh yeah, he would do all kinds of little things that be underwater with him. He was certified when he was 10, which is very young. And then I've never pushed him. And then little by little, he's lost a little bit of the interest. So he's...
Because he's now, that's understandable because he started so young.
Yeah.
Now, but do you feel that's something he's eventually going to go back to?
Well, I think what's going to happen is he's going to meet a young lady who scuba dives.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, his interest will be rekindled. That's what I'm hoping for anyway.
Now, does the wife dive?
Oh, yes. She loves to dive. We love to dive together. It's taken me a while to understand what it is that she likes when she's underwater. But once I understood that, I became a much better buddy for her. Mm-hmm. I know that when she dives, I mean, she loves to dive in tropical places, but she dives up here as well. And when we dive up here, it's important to her that there be a lot of sunlight. So we generally stay shallow, 20 feet or so, maybe 30 feet. Yeah, no, let's say 20 feet. And then at that depth, you have lots of sun coming down. You can almost feel like you're in the tropics because it's so bright. Mm-hmm. And even though you're shallow, there's still so much to see. There's so much life that you don't lose anything by not going deep.
Now, how do folks get your book?
The book will be available on June 15th, and you can order it on Amazon. It will also be in bookstores, but the easiest thing is for everybody right now is just Amazon. It will be available as an ebook as well, mm-hmm. and as a printed book.
Now, any tours coming up?
Any what?
Any tours?
Tours? I don't really.
Speaking engagements, etc.
There's going to be a launch party for the book, and speaking engagements. I announce them on my website, which is jerryshine.com, and they come up, and generally don't have a lot of advance notice. I know I'm speaking up in New Hampshire early in June. And then doing something else, a squid dive later in the year. But I announce all that stuff on my website.
Great. Now, any closing comments?
Just
to those that would be divers, any words of encouragement? Put it that way.
Yes. If you've ever been interested in going underwater and seeing what's under there for yourself, I would highly encourage it. There's no experience like that in the world. It's very accessible to us right here. We live in a place where you can just walk right off of the beach and start seeing stuff. And once you are underwater and once you are free of gravity and you can move on multi-dimensional planes that are impossible to us on land, there's no experience like that.
Okay. Well, any quick shout-outs to any of your diving friends?
Well, just say hello to all of my friends out there, and I hope you all have great dives.
Great. And this has been fantastic.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much. And see you out there in the water.